Hi everyone, thank you very much for stopping by and returning to the old world. Today, we turn our attention to the Empire of Man and its need for an arcane journal or a little bit of love through some kind of balanced datasheet, much in the way that 40k gets adjustments. But what kind of help really does the Empire need to drag it from the bottom of the league table to some kind of respectable mediocrity? Let's have a meander through what might make the Empire of Man pretty decent. So the first thing we need to do, I think, is think about what the Empire of Man represents and what its strengths are on the battlefield. And the Empire's always been a bit of a jack of all trades. In one way, that's a strength because it allows you as the player a huge variety of methods of bringing an army to the field. You've got loads of different playstyles available to you. There's knights, there's pretty solid elite infantry, there's chaffy sort of infantry, missile troops, combat troops, guns, all sorts of things. And the wizards can take pretty much any law of magic they need, so you can really aim for a particular law that aids a particular playstyle and not be limited in your choices. The downside being, whatever playstyle you choose to pursue, another army is going to do it better than you. With a couple of exceptions, I think whatever the Empire bring to the field, another faction that leans into that methodology is going to do it better. But of course, you're going to hopefully do it better than a faction that doesn't lean into that. So there's an argument around maybe going with a balanced force that can take on anyone with a slight twist towards what makes your army that little bit special. But what else does the Empire do well? And there's one thing I think which it does do slightly better than most of the factions, and that is artillery. Access to great cannon is massive. When you're looking at counter battery fire, if you're trying to take out enemy war machines, you're getting rid of pretty much any war machine that you've wounded on a 3+, whereas most other artillery can only do it on a 5 or a 6 on a dice roll. So normal cannon, for example. And I think that does kind of mean that the Empire perhaps leans towards gun lines as its speciality is the best, most effective way of playing it. Although I know there's a lot of disagreements out there. There's people saying you want lots of knights and go for the grind, demigriffs, stuff like that. Other people, Morning Glory, for example, takes a lot of guns and then backs them up with a load of state troops armed with close combat weapons. He seems to be having a reasonable amount of success with that build. But overall, let's face it, the Empire of Man is not getting resounding, massive win rates. So, as a faction, it needs a bit of help. It needs to be dragged up a bit closer to that magical 50% number to make it really broadly competitive. So it's got an even chance of winning any given matchup. Which begs the question, how do we go about doing this? Perhaps the obvious thing to do is the introduction of a dragon. Now, I don't think Games Workshop are going to give the Empire a dragon. In previous editions, they have had access to them, and as part of the Imperial Zoo, there was a dragon. Don't see that happening. Maybe if the Emperor becomes a special character, but again, in this point in the time frame, and given there's so many other dragons floating around, it just doesn't feel like something that's realistic. What we do know that'll happen is when an arcane journal drops, Games Workshop will give the Empire 2 different armies of infamy. I suspect one of these is likely to be something sensible. One of them may well be some kind of meme list. If you think the orcs and goblins have got trolls, we know that dwarves are going to get the Slayer King as a special character. That makes me think Slayer Army, again, a bit of a meme list perhaps. So maybe we'll see one sensible thing and one bit wacky thing when it comes to the Empire too. What the wacky thing, anyone's guess, but the sensible Army of Infamy, I can see very much being something based around the Knights of the Empire. And this is where I think we can see quite a small change, which will make quite a big difference to the Empire. What do I mean by this? Well, a number of factions out there have rules attached to certain characters. So if you have a dwarf king leading your army, for example, you can have a unit of Longbeards as core. There's ways of having rangers as core, but just a single unit. The Empire don't have this. And it would make sense, at least in my head, that if you had a Grand Master or a Chapter Master leading your army, then you'd be able to have a single unit of Knights of the Inner Circle as a core choice for the Empire. Now, Knights of the Inner Circle are obviously just straight up better than regular Knights. They're a little bit stronger, a little bit better initiative. Come with the good special rules as standard. To the extent it might be that if you had access to them as core, you'd probably always take them, but only, I suppose, insofar as the same way as a dwarf army is always going to have that unit of rangers as core, they're always going to have that Longbeard unit as core as well. So I don't think it's a major issue. But it will also make the Knights of the Inner Circle a bit more of a feasible choice. What do you mean by this? Well, at the moment, one of the big things I think that stands against having Inner Circle Knights in your army is the fact that they are a special choice and they're competing with so much stuff that you probably want in your army. If you are looking for a cavalry heavy grind fest, you're probably looking at bringing in Demigryph Knights. If you're taking a gun line, they're in the same category as Great Cannons, for example. If you're looking for a more resilient, well-armoured infantry block, they're competing with your greatswords. The interesting stuff for the Empire is very much in the special and rare categories, and if you're buying Inner Circle Knights, you're taking away from those other things that you're more likely to want in your list. Now, I think Imperial Knights of the Inner Circle, they're pretty good. They can do some damage. Their 2+ armor is not to be sniffed at all. And if I could take them as core, I would absolutely take one unit like that pretty much every time. But I don't think that alone solves the Empire's problem. What's the other big problems they've got? Well, for me, my Empire forces really love to fail leadership tests. And even if they've got a BSB reroll around, inevitably, Empire State troops crack under any kind of pressure. This is meant to be, particularly with like veteran state troopers, reasonably well trained, they're disciplined soldiers, then there to hold the line. It's all of this mythology, the stories around them, it's about holding the line. So I think they would really benefit from maybe an extra special rule which gave them that kind of benefit. Now, Bretonnian men-at-arms have the Warband special rule. So a big unit with lots of ranks suddenly sees their leadership absolutely rocket. Something like that would obviously really benefit state troops. Or possibly some kind of bonus to their leadership, perhaps if there's another state troop unit or state missile unit within, say, 3 inches. As the units take heart from the fact their neighbours are there protecting their flanks, etc., making them more likely to be resolute and, to importantly, hold the line. Because ultimately that is the job of the infantry, isn't it? It's holding the line and allowing the more killy, more elite hammer units to get round the flank and start getting some work done. And if you made those two changes, then you've actually suddenly got two very viable playstyles available to you. The big blocks of infantry suddenly become a lot more viable. They're not going to break as easily. They're going to be able to absorb the pressure and grind out more effectively. make your opponents really have to pause and think about choosing whether they want to engage or not. And you've also got a way of giving yourself some good quality aggression, some good quality counter-charging by making inner circles a core choice. You add in the idea, pretty much discounted as being unrealistic, of getting hold of a dragon, or I suppose on that theme, maybe a bit of diversity in types of steam tank to give you ones maybe a little bit more maneuverable and a bit less unreliable on the movement side, even if other aspects of them perhaps get weakened depending on the kind of steam tank you go for. So there we have it. I think a number of ways in which the Empire of Man can just get a few little tweaks which will perhaps make them a lot more effective on the battlefield and drag them up to that mid-table mediocrity, which is kind of where they need to be living, really. Albeit, I think I would definitely agree with the overall position that all the factions should be winning around 50% of the time. So that 45 to 55% win rate being quite significant. So do you have any great ideas as how the Empire could be changed? Just little tweaks, just to make it that little bit more playable, getting that little bit more success from the games? Do let me know if you have down in the comments below. All that remains for me to say is thank you very much for listening. If you've enjoyed this videos and others like it, do please consider subscribing. It is the best way of supporting a small channel such as this, as well as giving a few moments of your time to listen to the video or to watch the video, as your choice may be. Once again, thank you very much for watching. I am Return to the Old World. Have a great day.